because mindset is everything,
It
right?
is,
So you
yeah.
can say, hey, I failed at this, or you can say, hey, what is the lesson that we learn in this? Sometimes it costs us money. Other times it may cost us time, but you want to make sure you see it as a lesson.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, we got a big meetup tonight here in downtown San Diego, our September Beers and Deals rooftop here in San Diego. Any listeners out there that, everyone in the San Diego area would love to have you guys out. We've been doing it for 5 years now, second Wednesday of every month. But I'm really excited because we got a special guest today. I got someone who actually grew up out in Peru and bought his first rental property at the age of 23 without papers as an immigrant, and is now rocking and rolling, got an awesome real estate portfolio, doing big things as a realtor in the real estate space. I got my man, Diego Corzo. Diego, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. I am really excited to be here in San Diego because you guys have amazing weather.
Yeah, man, appreciate you coming down and hanging out, dude. Big fan of everything that you're doing, and definitely a really inspiring story because, I feel like a lot of folks in the space make a lot of excuses that are trying to get in the game. They're on the sidelines. They're trying to buy their first deal. They're trying to start their first business. And there's a million excuses out there, right? But your story is compelling because you came over here as an immigrant from Peru, didn't have any papers, and you've been able to build what you've been able to build, which is pretty cool. Where in Peru are you from, bro?
I am from Lima, Peru.
Lima. Okay.
Yeah, came
Dude,
here when I was 9.
damn, that's impressive, dude. I really want to go down to Peru. I want to go down Lima. I want to go to Cusco, and I want to hike Machu Picchu.
Oh, man.
It's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Yes, it is.
Have you done that hike?
Not yet.
You
That's
have
one
not?
of those things that when I go back to Peru,
Okay.
that's one of those things that I'm going to be able to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've heard great things. I've done Colombia, Argentina, and Brazil. But I really want to go down and see the rest of South America, man. Love the people down there. And, I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel like a lot of folks in the U.S., they think it's dangerous down there. I think the media says it's dangerous. And so a lot of folks, when they think about traveling, they think of going to like London or Paris and some of these more mainstream areas of Europe, right? Bali's really popular right now. But for whatever reason, people don't talk about going down to South America a whole lot. But every time I've been down there, man, I've met the nicest people. I've ate the best food. The scenery, the culture has all been second to none. And to be honest with you, man, I've been to some areas where people consider like, oh, this is pretty rough. Be careful. Like Rio de Janeiro, for example. Medellin's very safe now. Medellin used to be like the murder capital of the world 40 years ago, 35 years ago with Pablo Escobar and all that stuff. But dude, now it's like one of the safest cities in the freaking world. But Rio de Janeiro, people like, watch out. I'm like, dude, I went down there. I had no issues, man. Everyone's so nice. So I don't know. For whatever reason, it's not a mainstream thing. But dude, I love South America.
Yeah, and the food is amazing. I don't know if you ever had the Peruvian food, but
I
it
have
is
not.
one of those. It is one of the best cuisines in the world. So
Mm.
you definitely have to try it.
What makes the food there different than what you'll see in maybe Colombia?
Yeah, so Peru, they use a lot of spices, but it doesn't mean it's spicy. And Peru, too, as far as the cuisine goes, and Peru as a country, is the only country in South America that has the coast, so amazing seafood. It has the Andes Mountains, right? So there's a lot of amazing views and everything in the mountains, and the jungle. So you have 3 different types of foods, but the Peruvian food overall is very tasty and flavorful. We eat rice and I would say there's over 100 types of potatoes, if not more. And the seafood is just amazing. So Peruvian ceviche is really good. There's a lot of steak too. And I grew up a little bit in the restaurant industry.
Did you?
Because of my parents. And so that is one of those key things that I just love.
Yeah. I love some good ceviche, so I definitely have to check it out. What is the best time of year to go down there and hike Machu Picchu, you think?
To be honest, I don't know,
Okay.
but I would guess that it will be in the summer because it's like in the mountains, so it's not going to be as hot, I would say. But that because Peru is very rainy too in the winter. So in the summer, doesn't rain as much. So that is the opposite of here in the United States. So it will be between December to like March. That's our summer. Where here, of course, is the opposite, right? You have June till August or something.
Dude, I always say like Colombia is one of the best spots in the world. Medellin, Colombia.
Hmm.
Got 5 million people all in this cool valley. The temperature never gets colder than 60, never gets warmer than 80 degrees. And like I alluded to, 30 years ago, this was the murder capital of the world with Pablo Escobar and everything that was going on there. But now it is like safer than a lot of US cities such as Baltimore, Chicago, San Francisco. And, the first time I've been there like 3 times now, but the first time I flew in, you land in the airport and you come out and you go through this like tunnel through this mountain. And it's about a 45-minute drive into the city. And it was nighttime. You pop out on this other side of this tunnel, and all of a sudden you just see this big valley with 5 million people and the lights. And it's just this beautiful thing. Like everywhere within the valley, you got this awesome vantage point. And so all the restaurants and cities, all the neighborhoods, you have a really cool viewpoint and scenery of like the rest of the city. And then the food there is so good. The people are like the friendliest people you ever meet. A lot of good culture. Reggaeton music is down there. So it's like the reggaeton capital of the world. And so everywhere you go, they're playing reggaeton. But man, I love it down there. And like the climate, there's not a lot of humidity. And it's just beautiful. Everything's green and lush. And it's just, I don't know, man. It's cool. I like hanging out there. They call it the gateway to South America. And so I went there first. That was my first city I ever visited in South America. And now I've been to Argentina. I've been to Brazil. But Medellin's still my favorite so far. But I got to check out Lima. I want to check out some other areas of Peru. I want to go down to Chile. I would love to go down to Venezuela. I know it's not the best time right now to go down there. But I got a buddy actually on the podcast recently, Jack McCall. He went down there for a big skydiving trip in Venezuela, and he was like, dude, it was actually pretty safe and pretty cool as long as you stay in the right areas. So anyways, I say all this in that if you're a listener and you're like, hey, like I want to go to South America, but I've been kind of holding off, like you need to go down there. You got to check it out and you got to experience it. It's a whole nother world down there.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Totally agree.
So anyways, dude, so you grew up in Peru. How did your family like end up coming over to America? Like, talk to me about that story.
Yeah. So basically, it was 1999, and Peru, it just wasn't the safest place at the time. And for example, my mom, she had her purse stolen at a red light, once with a gun, once with a knife. Our car got stolen, and it was more like, oh my gosh, like, and it got stolen right outside my aunt's apartment. And so we had to restart a few times like that. And my parents were like, hey, you know what? This is not the best place. There used to be a lot of corruption too. And we decided to move to the States. Miami was
Number one.
where we moved.
Okay.
Yeah, because my dad's sister lived there. And we came here with a tourist visa. So my parents told me about it. And my dad and my mom, they sat us down and they asked me, Diego, we're going to go to the United States. We're going to leave Peru. We want to get your opinion. Do you think that your dad should go first, or do you think we should all go? And I was like, we're a family. Let's all go together. So they listened to me. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but we moved to Miami, and we moved to my aunt's house, and we slept for like 3 months in a bunk bed, the 4 of us. And my parents, the first week, they bought a van that we called the Ghost Train. We called it the Ghost Train because so it was $800 a van. It was a purple van. And we didn't know when it was going to turn on, when the AC was going to work, when the windows were going to come down or up or anything. And it will just stall at red lights randomly. So we call it the Ghost Train because we thought it was haunted, but it just didn't work as well. But that was our first car, right? And so we came here with basically zero, and we were able to start. We came with the immigrant hustle and on the pursuit of that American dream.
Dude, I love that. Thatch Ginn was on the podcast a couple months ago, and he has a similar story. He grew up in Vietnam, and his whole family came out here with like literally nothing but $100 to their name, and they were put up in Camp Pendleton. He didn't speak a lick of English, and now he's built this big thing. And I always say, like, people that are self-made, for whatever reason, man, it just hits different. And I know right away when I talk to folks that are entrepreneurs, business owners, the ones that are self-made, man, especially the ones that come from humble beginnings, are just more grateful. They're more humble. it's just something about their persona that hits a little bit differently. And then you get the other folks that are not self-made, and you're born into whatever you're born into, right? But there are some folks out there, I feel like the more arrogant ones, the cocky ones, the entitled ones, those folks tend to not be self-made. And I do notice a difference. And so I always appreciate someone more if they are self-made because of all the reasons that I just alluded to.
Yes. And I feel like coming here in the United States is like, since we started from nothing, it's very easy for us to like, we appreciate everything because the only way to go anywhere is up, right? We already know what zero is like. We can go back to our country and we don't want that, right? So it's like now we come here, we see opportunity. And that's one of those things that my parents did teach me was work ethic and persistence to achieve your goals and your dreams, because their work ethic is what has helped me lead by example. Like they led by example and it helped me be the person that I am today.
Yeah. For me, for example, like 5.5 years ago, I was working full time as an air traffic controller. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I literally was living in a tiny 1-bedroom condo. I had a car payment. I would go out a couple times a month and I was like broke after that. And the only thing I had to my name was investing into a 401k, right? And so now fast forward to today, like a lot of people that I meet, they see like all the stuff that I have now, the cars, the boat, office, all this stuff. And they say like, oh, it must be nice. But I'm like, no, like this version of me, what you see today is brand new. I never had this up until now. This is all brand new. And so because of that, I will always be very humble and I will always be very grateful and very appreciative of everything I have, because 5 years ago, I didn't have any of this.
Exactly.
It was all brand new to me. And so it hits a lot differently, right?
Yes, exactly. And then people see where you are now and they're like, oh my gosh, he got so lucky, right? But what they don't see is a lot of the work, the nights and everything that you put in to become the person that you are today, right? And they feel like they sometimes may skip that because they don't know what they don't know. But I believe that you have to go through a certain amount of sacrifice or grind to be able to appreciate really where you can get to be. And then when other people will tell me, hey, I can't do this because of this or because of that, I'm like, hey, it's part of the journey. You just have to continue. Let me help you, see how I can help, maybe give you some guidance. But it's like you have to go through those struggles, because sometimes I always say too is comparison is the thief of joy. Because on social media, we share our highlight reels. Sometimes we do share the big ups and downs, but people just see those highlight reels and they think that everything becomes easy, that everything is easy on the way up. And it's a roller coaster ride. So people begin to compare, oh, he was able to achieve that. Oh, he has that. It's like, yeah, but you don't know all the no's that I had to go through to get to that final yes, for example.
Yes, absolutely. I will also say this, man, like it's good to be humble. It's good to be grateful. And I tell the team all the time, like, we're building a big thing, right? And I'll always be humble. I will always be grateful. But I say like, this is just the fucking beginning. Like we are just getting warmed up. And when I say that, I mean that, because if you think about it, man, like 5 years ago, I was working full time as an air traffic controller. I didn't have any of this. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about real estate investing, right? And so to think that we could do all this in a relatively short amount of time, it's like, yes, I'm very appreciative of it. But the bar has never been so fucking low at the same time. And so I see what's in front of us. I see what's out there. And I'm like, this is just the fucking beginning, right?
Yes.
And I mean that.
Yes.
But
yes. And there's a quote from Hal Elrod. He wrote the book, The Miracle Morning. He said once in 2014 was when I heard it on somewhere. And he said, be happy with the life that you have as you pursue the life of your dreams, right? So be happy with what you have right now. You have to be grateful, but that doesn't mean that you need to stay there. Just pursue the life of your dreams. And I feel like that for me was really helpful at the time where I was, because it just caused me to appreciate what I had, but still have that hunger to pursue more. And that's something that it also determines, or it did for me, that happiness is a choice. And that for me is very important, because once you have gratitude or you're happy, you change the frequency of your life, like your energy, right? And I told you in the beginning, I'm like, hey, I like the energy in this room. It's really good, the vibes. And I feel like that's really important so that you can align yourself so that when things begin to happen, you're like, how did this happen? Or how did this happen? It's like you're just on a path.
Hmm.
That's important.
Yeah, it's so big, dude. Energy and vibe and all that is so important. Culture fit and all that is number one for me. But I agree with everything you say, man. It's just like life is short, so enjoy it and be appreciative, and like you said, be grateful. But because it's short, at the same token, it's like I'm like I want to see how far I can go. You know, I want to. It's almost like a game to me now, right? I'm like I want to take care of the people, everyone that's in our communities, our investors, and my team, family, my friends. Yes, that's number one. But secondly, I'm like I want to see how far I can go in this game of life, right? And so I know in order for me to get there, I'm going to need all the possible resources, right? So anything that I can bring on, whether it's for the team or for me, and like whatever we can do to like get a competitive advantage, I'm like, let's try it. I'm willing to try anything once, you know? And if it's not a fit, we'll pivot,
Exactly.
you know, and that's it. So anyway, so back to your story, man. We digressed here a little bit. So you guys came out here to Miami. You guys have this van called the Ghost Van. And then what was your dad's like? Was your dad like the sole income earner of the family at the time?
In the beginning, so my dad got a job at a Peruvian restaurant as a cook, making $5 an hour. And my mom was trying to find work. So she did get a job in a not so good place in Miami at a gas station. And I remember that they gave her the shift from like 11:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. So for my dad, so like we only had one car and it was like about 45 minutes away. So it didn't make sense for my dad to go drop off my mom because it wasn't the safest place. Like drop her off, then come back, sleep for a few hours, and then go back again. So my dad would go because it wasn't the safest. Go there, sleep in the car while my mom worked, and then at 7 a.m. or whatever, come back, right? And then my dad would go to the restaurant, 12-hour days and stuff like that. Until later, my mom was able to get a job also at the restaurant. And but when I was a kid, I didn't know that we were undocumented. I heard that we were undocumented, but it didn't hit me, right? I just didn't know what kind of obstacles we would have or anything until I turned 15 years old. That was the first time that I saw that I was like, oh man.
So how does that work? Your parents came over here on some sort of visa,
On a tourist visa.
And then let it expire.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. And then how long did they stay before you found out?
So, well, till now, we've been here in the United States, and but now like we've been. This is my 25th year in the United States. I'm 34, and it's been a crazy journey, right? But throughout, when we first came in, we didn't speak any English, so I went into third grade, and I remember I was in ESL for 2 years, and it was hard for me because when I was a kid too, I used to have a really bad speech impediment. So I would stutter a lot in English and in Spanish. So I had to learn. And my teacher, she didn't speak any English in third grade. And I mean, she didn't speak any Spanish in third grade. So I would have to ask questions to the other students what things will mean. And she would be like, Diego, why are you always talking? Why are you always talking? I'm like, I just don't understand. But then later I learned English very well. And yeah. But it was a journey. It was a journey of a lots of ups and downs and seeing opportunity. But the one thing is seeing my parents going through their journey of work, right, and work ethic. They always saw opportunity instead of seeing obstacles, right, or challenges. I saw opportunities, and they saw opportunities, and that's what they taught me. And they would say always like, in the Peruvian way, chamba is chamba, which is like work is work. Like you just got to do it. And that was an example that they set. And in the beginning, my parents, because we couldn't afford like a babysitter or anything, they would take us to the restaurant. So my brother and I would basically be at the restaurant in one of the offices, at the office, while my parents would work. My mom as a waitress, my dad as the cook. And so it was Miami, right? So Miami, the restaurants, or at least back then, Fridays and Saturdays, they would close at like 5 a.m. because there will be live music or karaoke, and Miami restaurants don't close at 2. like if it turns into more the nightlife. So we grew up in the restaurant. We would sleep in a little on the floor with my brother and I. And then I remember Fridays, my parents would go into work at 11 a.m., uh, close the restaurant at 10 p.m., and then we will be there for the night part till 5. And Saturday we do it again. And then Sunday morning we're there at 10. So it was
7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy,
So
man. And how long did that go on for at the
that
restaurant?
that went on the restaurant. Well, even till now, my parents, now they became owners. So now they own 2 Peruvian restaurants in Sarasota. Amazing food. And but at that restaurant was those, like, that was where my dad, they had such a good work ethic that people thought that it was their restaurant. And so that's when my dad was like, well, if people think this is our restaurant, we should open up our own restaurant. And that's what they did. So they opened up their own restaurant, and they've always been entrepreneurs. And that's what made me catch the bug. And I'll tell you this. So with the ceviche, right, there's a lot of lemon that goes into it. Like, it gets cooked in lemon. And I remember being 10 years old, and I was at the restaurant, I would see my parents work, and I'm like, I want to be productive. I want to make money. So I went to the owner and I was like, Manuel, if I squeeze a box of lemons for the ceviche, can you pay me $10 per box? He was like, yeah. So I remember being 10 years old at the restaurant with an apron and all that stuff, and just squeezing. And I was like, I would make $10 per box. So that was one of my first things into hustle, of like seeing opportunity
Mhm.
and going from there.
That's pretty cool, man.
So yeah, 10
That's
years
pretty
old.
cool. And so, definitely humble beginnings there. Restaurant industry, that's tough. You're on your feet all the
It
time,
is.
taking orders and all that sort of thing. But then you consider the hours, and then the fact that before that your dad was sleeping in the van while your mom was working at the gas station. That's pretty crazy. So how did you first get into real estate?
Yeah. So I'll share this. When I was 15 years old, right? That's when I found out that I went to the DMV to get my driver's license. And that was when I found out I couldn't drive. When I turned 18, I began applying for jobs. And I'm sorry, when I turned 18, I began applying for colleges. And I found out at that point that I didn't have the right paperwork to get student loans or financial aid. I went to my first year of college at FSU anyway. And at that point, I found out too that I couldn't work legally in the US. I didn't know that you needed work permits and all this other stuff. So I had to get creative. And that was when my buddy, Pascal, he's one of my best friends, he throws this book at me. And it was called Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I shared those because there's been obstacles, right? That for me, my unfair advantage on my journey has been resourcefulness, because I always found a way to get things done. Couldn't work or drive. I always found rides to and from anywhere. Couldn't qualify for student loans, and then found out I couldn't work. I got an internship. I created an LLC, so that they could pay me with an EIN instead of paying Diego with a social. They will pay Diego's LLC. And I convinced companies to hire me as a contractor, not Diego Corzo. But it wasn't until going through all of that, I was like, there has to be another way that I can create wealth. And reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's the reason why I shared this, is because that book basically taught me 2 things: that you can either trade your time for money, or you can make your money work for you. So I was like, okay, I have all these obstacles right now. I cannot work, I cannot drive, I can't do anything, but I want to choose real estate as the avenue for me to build wealth. And I knew that at some point I was going to start investing in real estate. So I set a goal when I was 21 to have 10 properties by age 35. I was able to achieve that though by age 27 or 28. That was really good, but it was having that mindset of, okay, I want to build passive income and I start building wealth. So I was able to buy my first property at age 23, and I was able to buy it cash because I couldn't figure out any other way. At first, I wanted to start with house hacking, but it didn't go well from that perspective because lenders wouldn't lend me any money. So I called my dad frustrated. And I remember what Rich Dad Poor Dad in that book, it says, hey, don't ask yourself, like, don't tell yourself why, or say, I can't afford this, but ask yourself, how can I afford this? So I remember calling my dad all frustrated. I'm like, man, I set my goals and always in my life I hear, no, no, no. I just want to buy a house. And by that point, I moved to Austin. And my dad tells me, well, how much do you have available? And I was like, I have 25K cash. And he goes, well, there are some properties here in Florida that we can buy for 50, 60, 70,000. I have 25. Would you want to go 50-50? And I say, okay, let's do it. So we found a house that was 60K, and we borrowed money from my buddy Pascal, 10K from his dad. And I went in 50-50 with my dad with a $10,000 loan. And funny enough, we were able to rent the main house for around $950. And we turned the garage into, like, we added a bedroom and a bathroom, stuff like that. And we were able to rent that for like $400. So we were making from like the 1% rule or 2% rule. That was one of those things that back in 2013, when I bought that property, that was pretty good cash flow from that perspective.
Yeah,
for
for sure. You still
60K.
own that property today?
No, actually my dad bought me out because he was like, hey, you're going to have this house later in the future. I want to get the cash flow. How about I'll just give you 50K and you'll have it later. I was like, all right. So he bought me out from that property, but my dad still has it. And
What's that
now
house worth today?
that house is that house is worth around 280,
280,
I
nice.
think, or
And you bought it for
300.
50? You said 60. Damn.
60. My dad bought it for 280 because in Florida, the market crashed,
Mm.
right? And bad in 2000 and 2008. So we bought it in 2013, and that was when it was coming up. So yeah, so now he's been able, and my dad is one of those guys that he doesn't like loans. So he does own properties, but
But
he
all
just
cash.
owns it outright. I'm
Yeah.
like, this guy, yeah, he
Mhm.
just likes his cash flow
Sure.
like that. So it's been good.
That's cool, man. I love to hear that. As a busy real estate investor or entrepreneur, time is money and first impression is everything. Every day to make it easy on myself, I wear Built Basics clothing. Whether you're a girl or guy looking for workout gear, joggers, shirts, button-downs, hats, or shoes, Built's got you covered. Super comfortable, tight in all the right places to make you look fresh and clean all the time. Visit BuiltBasics.com and use promo code SUMMERS20 to receive 20% off of your order. Again, that's BuiltBasics.com. That's BYLT Basics.com. Use promo code SUMMERS20 to receive 20% off of your order. Now back to the show. So you do some rent by the room Airbnb stuff. Tell me about that.
Yes. So what was cool is that fast forward to 2014, I finally found a lender that could lend me putting 5% down, so
Okay.
owner occupant, and I began what they call house hacking. Right, I was living for free, rent out 3 rooms, and that allowed me to save money and basically do it over and over and over again. What some people don't know, and this is something that I recommend to a lot of young people, is you can get a house. You don't need 20% down to buy a house. You can start with 0 to 5% loan down payment program. You do have to move into the property. So whether it is a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, or single family house, you can use the house hacking strategy when you can rent on one side, live on the other, or rent out the rooms. And you can do that once a year. People don't know that they can do that once a year. So you can move out. And that's what I did. I bought one property in 2014, lived there. I was making $300 after living for free. In Austin, bought one for $170. I'll share a story about that later. So bought that for $170. I still own it. And I moved out, bought another one a year later. And now I'm making $1,000 from this property. And now I'm living for free still, right? And at that point, I still had my job at GM. I was able to get a job after in 2012 when I was able to finally work and drive through the DACA program. Since I'm a dreamer, I'm what Congress calls a dreamer. And then my buddy Pascal, he's one of my best friends. As I said, I told him, I was like, bro, I'm cash flowing so much from these properties. Like, this is crazy. And he's like, well, how can I get into it? Because at that point he was living in Denver. So I was like, dude, I'll be your boots on the ground. You are the one with the money. I had no money. I'm just putting low down payment, saving a little bit and putting down. You're the one with the money. I'll manage the properties. By that point, I had become a realtor already. So I'm like, bro, I will find the property. I'll do this. I'll do everything. And he was like, all right, let's do it. And so we began buying, we bought 3 or 4 properties, renting them by the room, which is now called co-living. But that is one of the ways to maximize the cash flow. And I'll share 2 things if I can.
Yeah, of course.
When you're working with partners, is very important what I call you have to complement your unfair advantages. And your unfair advantages are time, money, knowledge on the market, experience / your network, right? Because at that point, I didn't have any money, but he did. But I had the knowledge and I was the boots on the ground and I had the network and the time. He had the money. So there was a great compliment. Later, now I have become the person that does have a little bit of money, and now I can leverage other partners, leveraging their time, leveraging their expertise. So it's a circle. You just have to start with whatever stuff you have right now, right? So be happy with whatever you have, but bring value to other people. And that for me has been very important in bringing value and seeing that with scaling, creating partnerships is one of those things that has helped me. So we partner up, bought 4 properties, and that increased the cash flow of those properties because Austin is, it has a high property tax state, since we don't have any state income tax. So they have to get the money from somewhere, right? So they get it from the property taxes. But using the co-living strategy is a great way to maximize the cash flow where regular investors wouldn't be able to with a long-term tenant.
Yeah, and real quick on the partnership thing, I agree. You got to partner with folks that complement your skill set. So if you're good at sourcing deals and talking to brokers and maybe raising money, then you should probably partner with someone that complements that skill set. Maybe they're good at underwriting, analyzing deals, a lot of the back end stuff, the asset management. It's typically 2 different personalities too. People that are good at sourcing deals or good at raising capital, generally speaking, they're good at sales, right? But I always say the number one thing that you should be looking for if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're considering partnering with someone on a real estate deal is number one, it's 2 things. Number one, first and foremost, I got to make sure, is this person a good human being? How do they treat others? How do they treat third-party vendors? How are they going to talk to the property managers? How are they going to talk to team members? Because at the end of the day, real estate investing business, it's a people's business, right? So that's number one. Are they a good human being? How do they talk to the servers? How do they talk to, just people that are in the industry? Number 2, if they check that box, is do we have an equal or a equivalent level of risk tolerance, right? Because, for example, if someone's got a high level risk tolerance and another person has a low level of risk tolerance, that's never going to work. My first partnership, I had 2 partners and we bought a bunch of real estate together. We still own some real estate today. Love them. They're my friends today. We had a successful partnership. 2 years ago, I decided it was a tough decision to break apart. The reason was because I have a relatively high level of risk tolerance. They have a relatively low level of risk tolerance, right? As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a real estate investor, there are going to be unknowns. There's going to be things that come up, right? We can plan for the worst, but we can't plan for everything, right? You can set aside capital reserves, you can set aside contingency capital, but things are going to pop up. There's going to be things that arise that you just can't plan for. For example, in January, our hotel got flooded out. Insurance didn't pay a dime, right? We can't plan for those things. A flood in San Diego, right? Southern California had the most rainfall that we've ever seen in like 40 something years. Can't plan for a flood in San Diego, right? It's a very rare case. Insurance said, hey, we're not going to cover it, yada, 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 right? And so at a certain point as a real estate investor entrepreneur, you have to be good with a little bit of unknown and you have to have the confidence in your ability to go out there, rain or shine, when things come up, to know, hey, we're going to figure this out. We're going to strategize. We're going to pivot. We will grind. We will hustle. We will figure these things out. We always figure things out as long as you put your mind to it, right? A lot of us, myself included, if you look back and look at every opportunity or every hardfall that you have had or encountered, any challenge that you've had in your life, when have you not figured it out? We always do.
We always do.
We always do, right? One of my favorite sayings is, businesses don't fail because they run out of money. Businesses fail because the entrepreneur gives up. right?
Yeah.
And so you have to be okay with a little bit of unknown. And so I say all this in that partnership did not ultimately work out because their level of risk tolerance was very low. And so they didn't want to take any risk, right? And because I have a lot of confidence in my ability, my team's ability to figure things out when things hit the fan, I'm okay taking some risks. I'm okay with a little bit of unknown because I'm confident knowing that we're gonna figure things out. And so because of that, we had a lot of decisions to make. As an entrepreneur, we got hundreds of decisions that come up every single week. And so under that particular partnership, meetings, there was 4 or 5 hours, 6-hour meetings for every single decision. Well, you're never going to grow into that circumstance, right? And so we didn't see eye to eye. And so I realized I was never going to reach my full potential under that structure. And so it was a very tough decision. I love those guys. It was a very successful partnership. But ultimately, I decided to break off and go on my own. And I think one of my biggest takeaways and one of my favorite sayings out there is, you will only grow to the level of your constraints, not your potential. And so since I removed that partnership, it's been 2 years now, I have grown more in those 2 years than I have the entire 37 prior years before that.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I always say too, like, there's a time for everything, right? One of my mentors, David Osborne, he says like, hey, there's an expiration date for everything. And it's
AJ Osborne?
No.
David Osborne.
David
Got
Osborne.
it. Okay.
Yeah. David Osborne.
Okay.
He's been one of my mentors since I was 23 years old. Amazing,
what did he say?
Amazing person. He said, everybody has an expiration date, but it's up to you to determine when that is. And even death, right? We all die. So even our body has an expiration date. So everything has an expiration date. And I feel like there's timing for everything, right? There might be a time, there may have been a period of time, for example, that for that partner, their risk tolerance may have been up, like to match yours. But then life happens, family or something happens, and it's like, hey, I'm in this period of my life that I need to be less risky for the time being. And you can say, hey, when we started this partnership, we said that we were going to do these kinds of deals. We either need to pivot on strategy or we need to pivot as partners, right? And that is okay. Not every partnership is going to go for forever.
And I think that's the beauty of real estate. Like, you can do a deal with a couple partners and see how it goes. You don't need to partner with them forever and do all these deals, right? See how it goes. Do a deal, do a couple deals. But like you said, if it's not aligned, you pivot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Most partnerships break up.
Yes.
That's just the name of the game,
Yes.
right? And so for me, I'm kind of like a control freak, I would say. Like, I'm very particular. I'm very concise on how I want things done. But I always like, I don't want to do this alone at the same time, right? And so I got the team, and we're going to build this thing together, and that's what we do. But I think for me, it's easier having my own thing, because now when we have decisions to be made, I tell the team all the time, I'm like, guys, I don't care if it's the wrong decision or the right decision. Let's just make a decision and roll with it, right? And if it's the wrong decision, we'll pivot and we'll get better from it. If it's the right decision, we'll throw some gas on it and we'll go deeper. And the last thing I'll say is this: is the same time it would take some people to take, maybe a whole week to make one decision.
Mm-hmm.
We're now operating at a pace where we're making 50 decisions a week, and that compounded over weeks, over months, over years is the difference between playing college basketball and making it to the NBA.
Yes. I feel like having the ability to make decisions, like the speed that one can make the decision, that's what can set success, like from a different scale from one end to the next. It is those moments of how quickly it can take somebody to say yes or no or maybe or let me think about it. Have you read the book Rocket Fuel?
I have the book, and I've skimmed through some of the important chapters. Like, this is a while back, but I haven't read the whole thing.
But like the difference between like the visionary and the integrator,
yes,
right? So it's like with partnerships too, you want to know like who's going to be, and you have to set the expectations on like who's going to be the visionary, who's going to be taking more of the integrator role, so that you know that you're playing through your strengths. And I feel like at that point, you're more of a visionary too, from the perspective that you may be the one with the vision and you have your team to help you execute it.
Yeah, we use EOS as like an operating system. And so, yeah, like I'm definitely the visionary. And then, ideally, I have a couple of integrators on my team, and they go out and execute, right? But yeah, I think that's very key, very important with every business.
Yes.
But yeah, just using EOS. I mean, once we implemented that, like almost 2 years ago, and I cannot fathom running a business without some sort of like operating system where you got the KPIs. We call it scorecard, and so every member on the team has a scorecard based on their rocks, right? And and that's how we measure the success of the business, the future of the business. And I know when certain rocks are low, there's certain areas of the business that are going to be affected by it.
Yes.
It's just the name of the game, bro.
Yes, that is very important.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I see all this and I agree with you. Partnerships, very important for me. Number one, you got to be a good human being. Number two, do you have a similar level of risk tolerance? If you don't, it's never going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just being a good human. I'm a big believer. Just be good and do what's right. I feel like if you do what's right, other people pay attention. Even if you make a mistake, you can own it and you see it as a lesson. And because mindset is everything, right?
Is,
so you can say, hey, I failed at this, or you can say, hey, what is the lesson that we learn in this? Sometimes it costs us money. Other times it may cost us time, but you want to make sure you see it as a lesson so that you can take and you ask yourself, what is great about this, or what is the lesson that I can learn from this, no matter what situation you have, whether it's good or bad.
Speaking of lessons, you alluded to having a $50,000 lesson selling Cody Sanchez's house in Austin. Talk about that.
Yes, I helped her buy a house.
Oh, you helped her buy a house.
Buy a house, yes. The market, I'll share the story and hopefully it's okay. But I helped her buy her home. And it was right at the point where the market was, it was hot. It was really hot. And we went under contract quickly because in those times as a realtor, just with anything, what we're saying, speed is key.
Money loves speed, poverty loves indecision.
I love that quote. Damn. So we were going through the buying process and everything. The realtor told me some things, and she sent me the paperwork and everything. And I made a mistake of not putting it in the contract, even though she sent me everything and she said, this is in it. So I have it in the emails and everything, but I failed putting it in the contract. And later when we were going through the option period, the inspection period, the realtor said, hey, you didn't put it on the contract, so this thing is not included. And I was like, what do you mean? We have it we have all the emails. You told me via text, you sent me the documents. She's like, no, we're not gonna do that. So in order for me to save the deal, I had, because then by that point they got they got other offers, because we were able to take it off the market so quick that the seller was like, oh my gosh, like she felt like she was losing money that she could have gained by selling it for higher. So she was trying to do everything she could so that we could get out of the contract. And
what was the price on this purchase? Ballpark.
It was, I don't know if I'm allowed to share that, but yeah, but it was pretty high.
I'm just curious, I'm curious, like what kind of real estate Cody Sanchez is buying. Is it this for a primary residence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've met her a couple times, both here in San Diego, one time at the San Diego airport, and then another time here in Lida, Italy, where our office is located. But she was, picking up some, she was grabbing some food with her husband. And anyway, so trying to get on the podcast, we've been kind of talking about it. So hopefully get her on soon. But I'm just kind of curious what kind of real estate she's buying.
Yeah. So I helped her like going through the process. And I'm the kind of person that, like I mentioned, if I made a mistake, I will own it. And being in those circles, reputation is something that's everything, right? And I try to do what's right, whether I lose money or not. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do what's right. So I was able to use a lot of my commission that I could have made and to be able to save the deal. Because for me, it's better to keep a relationship for the long term rather than short term.
Always.
Right?
Always.
Yeah.
And you start burning bridges, you're not going to go very far.
Yeah, for sure. And that for me has been more important. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I lost $50K that I could have made, it was more like, hey, I kept a really good relationship with Cody. She was happy. Her husband, Chris, amazing human being. He's great. Awesome. And so then so now they're all happy. I'm happy. because money is money. We can always go out there and make more money, but a reputation is not something that it's something that you can lose like this.
Yeah.
And for me, that
You
is
still
way
made a
more
little commission though.
important.
You could have made 50K more.
Yeah, I made
Okay.
a little bit.
Okay. You
Like,
still made a little bit. Okay.
yeah, but it's like minuscule.
Yeah. But that's a valuable lesson, dude. And I've been there a few times where I'm like, I have an option to basically cut out a relationship or end something that I'm doing. And I'm like, you know what? No, that's not the long game, right? And I think when you nurture things, even though it's going to lose you a little bit of money in the short term, the long-term gain, the brand, the reputation, that is everything. The long-term gain is where it's at. And I think you always got to play the long game.
Yes, exactly. And there's I remember, I think it was she who said it. There's short-term people and long-term people. And you want to make sure that you're doing business with long-term people too. Because on the short term, things become super easy and just like people do like the get rich quick schemes and everything. And I've done a couple of those where like, hey, the crypto is very hot. I put 20K on this one thing and boom, it was gone a few months later, right? And you're like, crap. So it's just making sure that you're doing the stuff with the right people. That is most important.
Okay, and you have $100,000 lesson as a on a JV deal, joint venture, on a real estate deal. What the hell happened there?
So it was a JV deal. We are under an NDA, so I did lose the money that you allotted to, and again, I saw it as a lesson. It did suck, but now in the future, when I invest into other deals, I'm gonna ask different questions, right? The power of questions is the main thing, whether it's in mindset or in creating partnerships. Right now, I will ask, number one, can I run a background check on you?
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be number one when you're investing that much money into deals. Have you ever been sued? And if that's been the case, or no, can I run a background check and what will I find? And if they're like, no, you don't need to think, oh, this happened, but that guy was an asshole and don't like, there has to be something behind it. Like, what's the story, right? I would look at what other deals. I would ask, have you lost money on other deals, and what did you do to make it right? Because if they say, well, it wasn't my fault, blah 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 blah, it's like, well, it may not have been your fault, but what did you do to make it right? Because that for me is more important. Because like if they went out of the way to pay off the partners or whatever, that your money is safer than somebody who's like, well, it's his fault. I'm not gonna pay for it. Why should I pay for it? It's like, well, no, we have a level of trust, and you need to do what's right, right? So it's gonna be those couple of questions. Also, when was a deal? Can I call the people that maybe you have lost their money? Can I call them just to ask for feedback, for a review, just to hear what they say? For a deal that went well and a deal that went bad. And I would say, are your finances audited by a third party? That is key, because one can fudge the numbers on a P&L, on anything, right? But if they're audited by a third party, then that they have to make everything right. And those things for me are really important as I move forward and invest into other deals.
And I think another good thing, and we always offer this with our investors, is like, talk to a couple longtime investors of theirs. Hey, do you mind if I reach out and have a conversation with so-and-so? And so, someone that's been investing with us for 4 or 5 years, let's just say, go talk to that group and talk to them. Hey, how's the experience been? And they give you some good information, right? So that's another one right there. But yeah, man, so was this, you said JV?
That was a JV.
Joint venture. So you were not a limited partner?
No, that was, yeah. It was in a position that it could have been a syndication, but because we were only like less than 8 partners, we decided to
But you didn't have like voting rights or anything like that?
No, but
control.
The problem, and this was more of a JV, and the problem was that we guaranteed the deal. Like
You guaranteed the loan?
Yeah, we guaranteed the loan. Sorry.
You were on the note.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the problem, because that's what we're like, hey, let me just lose this part of the money, because somebody else was going to come in to save the deal. And I decided that instead of them doing capital calls and all this other stuff, we were like, hey, let me just lose this, see it as a lesson, and move on, right? But one of the key things is this, and this is also a lesson that I learned on the journey of investing. Yes, you can invest for cash flow, right? But later in the years that come, there might be more money that you're going to make actively, so you have to make tax advantage decisions. So I did, as a realtor in Austin, when the market went hot, I was making more money as a realtor, and I wanted to invest it wisely so that I can take advantage of cost segregation and all this other tax advantages, so that I didn't have to pay as much in taxes. Well, in doing those things, that was one of those deals that I trusted those people, but I also invested in a way that when the cost seg would come, the K1 will come negative, and then me being a real estate professional, I can deduct that from my
Yeah. Were you able to do that?
taxes, right? I was, until now I lost it, right? So
because
no,
the asset did the asset get taken back by
the
the
asset
bank?
get taken back, not by the bank,
What asset
but
class was this? Multifamily?
multifamily.
Wow.
Multifamily.
Big group or smaller group?
Well, the multifamily was 158 units. I was a very small partner, but
And this group had a lot of experience,
yes,
or are they newer?
yes, they supposedly they did, but
You didn't do any due diligence at all.
not as much as I should have. But the market also, here was the thing. In between 2021, I would say, to like 2023 or 2020, everybody and their mother was raising capital and buying multifamily and everything, whether they knew it or not.
I was there, and I was like, because when I got into real estate, it was all multifamily early on. And the last two multifamily deals I bought were in 2021, and it was the Arborist Townhomes and Timber Creek Apartments, both in North Carolina. That was in May, and then August of 21. After that, every deal that we looked at were so freaking competitive, dude. It was crazy. And the market was so hot. The interest rates were at an all-time low. Everyone was getting floating rate debt. And like a property would have, that was broker listed, that was like in a good area, these assets would have 45 property tours, 30 offers. And by the time I got the best and final, I'm like, these numbers wouldn't even make sense. And then I would circle back to see what these deals would trade for. And it would be like outrageous numbers. And I'm like, what are these people looking at in terms of assumptions? And that was when I made the pivot over to boutique hotels, because I was like, dude, I can't compete. And this is crazy. I don't know what they're looking at. And for me, I always want to be a good custodian of other people's money. I want to be able to sleep good at night. And so you got to stick to conservative underwriting, conservative assumptions. And the deal doesn't pencil, you know? And I feel like a lot of those operators were chasing acquisition fees. They're just trying to get deals done. And at the time, yeah, people thought, hey, we just came out of COVID, like there's no recession, like things are never going to slow down. And then guess what? Rates doubled overnight, rent growth stopped, and a lot of people got caught with their pants down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was out in Houston back in October. I interviewed Robert Martinez. I had him on the podcast, the apartment rockstar. And he had 15 good syndications. He got into a bad one, and it was a $52 million deal. And the bank foreclosed on him, the lender. It was a Freddie Mac deal, and lost like $17 million of investor capital, but he was buying on aggressive assumption, you know? So unfortunately, that was the time back then. But yeah, dude, it's I feel you. And I think for limited partners out there, you got to do due diligence. Best thing is to, talk to other investors who have invested. Ideally, you know them personally, and talk to them and see how their experience is. Not someone that's invested for a year, but try to find someone who's been investing for multiple years now. And also you can tell a lot by like just Googling people and seeing what's on social media, what's online, what's their reputation. I feel like there's a lot of operators out there where you Google them, you're not going to find a lot of information. I think that's a red flag.
Exactly.
A big red flag. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But now doing the due diligence and also asking them, here's one thing that I will ask, that I recommend everybody to ask, is asking them, are you putting any money into this deal?
That's big too.
And
yes.
when, because if they're raising money, let's say they're raising money and they're part of the GP, they will tell you, oh yes, I'm putting money into the deal. And you're like, how? They're like, they will sometimes leave the money that they would that they would get paid, right, as an origination
Oh,
fee
an
or
acquisition
whatever,
fee,
an
yeah.
acquisition fee,
Mhm.
sorry. They will leave it into the deal, and that's what they're saying. Oh, yes, I'm putting money into the deal. I'm like, no. Are you putting any of your cash right now into the deal? Because when things go bad, somebody might say, well, I didn't put any money. Yes, I put money there, that I left money that I earned, but it's like, are you gonna go to your family, to your wife, let's say, and be like, hey, I'm gonna put 200,000 of our hard-earned money into this deal? If people say, yes, I believe so much in this deal that I'm coming in with a lot of cash from my own pocket, I'll be like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and as a GP, you should always be putting your own money on the LP side with limited partners because it creates alignment of interest.
Exactly.
That's how you do it.
See, now if they don't, for example, if they don't, I'm like, okay, why not?
Mhm.
If you believe in this deal so much that you're like raising money for it and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on the pod, man, and big fan of everything you're doing, dude. And how can the folks get in touch with you and talk a little bit about this new launch you got going on?
Yes. So people can reach out to me on Instagram at Real Diego Corzo. I'm an open book, so I always like to share and on mindset, on real estate. So two things. If anybody wants to reach out and learn from my investments and what I do, the FIinvestors.com is my group where I share all of these lessons. And then we are launching, I don't know when this podcast is
This
going
will
to go
go out.
live.
This will go out later this week.
Later this week,
Yeah.
like by Friday?
This will go out tomorrow morning.
Okay, so perfect. So we're launching this new brokerage, this new company, and I can't share the name since it's going out tomorrow, but we're launching it this week, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a new company. It's going to be for realtors, and we can't wait what everything is going to go on as we grow. But it's going to change the game, and it's going to put a lot of people on the map. The one thing that I'll share is that because there's so many top producers going into this from day one, I'm a big believer that proximity is power. And when you're surrounding yourself with so many like-minded people, this is something that other people are going to get attracted to. And we're building it from value first. And that, for me, with the people that are there in this project, is going to be amazing. And we're launching it on Friday.
Dude, I love that, man. That's exciting.
Yes.
And you're in town for a little bit. Come to our meetup tonight, man. We'd love to
Yes.
have your rooftop here in downtown San Diego. I'd love to talk shop a little bit more, dude.
That will be awesome.
Cool.
That will be awesome. Thank you.
There it is. He's Diego Corzo. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.